My name's Gary, and with me is Jay.
Hello.
For those of you that aren't tuned in before, where we watch bad films, you can find us at anchor.fm/WWBF. You can also find us at Instagram at We Watch Bad Films and Twitter at We Watch Bad Films. If you'd like to have us watch more films, please consider dropping us a Ko-fi, I've never known how to say it. Just a couple of quid our way helps us get a few Amazon rentals so we can watch even more stinky films. That's ko-fi.com/WWBF pod. We'd really appreciate any donations to keep us watching absolute dreck. But before we talk about absolute dreck, because every week we watch some absolute dreck and talk about it, sometimes we have a chat about other things. Should we talk about what we've been watching?
Yeah, go on. What have you been watching?
You know, celebrating the return of UK cinemas and being able to watch things on a big screen, I went to watch something that I think has to be watched on a big screen, and that's A Quiet Place 2. Joe, have you seen either of these, The Quiet Place or Quiet Place 2?
I have seen neither.
Oh, I'm one of those things where I'm slightly jealous of the person who hasn't seen it, so you can go back and experience it for the first time. I had the pleasure of seeing the first one also in the cinema, and it's just not spoiling any gimmick to know that the characters have to be quiet, otherwise bad things will happen. And what's great is that that's spread to the cinema, so the audience were also being on their best behaviour, trying to be quiet, you know, listening to the dialogue. And at one point, somebody dropped their popcorn, made a big noise, and everyone went, which, you know, just perfectly added to it. It was great. Quiet Place 2 follows a similar sort of pattern in terms of you've still got to be quiet, but it's also very small scale as a film. You deal with a very small handful of characters. Written, directed by John Krasinski, most famously. This credit will follow him forever as Jim from The American Office. But it's showing himself to be a really talented filmmaker to get the, I'm going to say jump scares. That's really underselling it, but the sort of the tension and the pace, and yet you still care about these characters. Quiet Place 2, it also follows off exactly where Quiet Place Part 1 finishes and just carries that story right on. And I'm hoping that there is a third part, because I think it would be really good to sort of tie that up with a nice trilogy. It's really strongly recommended. If you can get a chance to see it at the cinema, I'd also really recommend it, because I think you need that ambience and that ability to keep yourself quiet and not feel like you want to be distracted and be in a tense room. I think that's the best way to watch it.
Well, it's a good job that they sort of were able to release it now into cinemas, because it sounds like you wouldn't really get the same effect at home.
I don't think so. No, you'd have to be really strict with yourself. You know, no phones policy, or you'd have to make sure everyone around you was quiet as well. Which, you know, when you're watching at home, I'll pause it and I'll just make a cup of tea. You know, and it just destroys that moment of tension that you have.
Yeah.
And just sort of breaks it apart. I would recommend you see it, so we can talk about it further. But as I said, just a handful of performances, including, you need to help me here, who's the guy who played the Scarecrow in the Batman films?
Cillian Murphy.
Including a great performance from Cillian Murphy, who it took my wife quite a long time to go, oh my God, it's Cillian Murphy, because he's just hidden within this character, huge beard, and he's not a very nice piece of work as we meet him. Only a few performances in it, but they're all great. A particular star turn from the young lead who is deaf, which is obviously has its own counterpoint within the Quiet Place universe. The fact that she's deaf is a great thing to stack up against the whole idea of being quiet. And I understand that there was a lot of work done to understand what her world was like as an actual deaf person and to try to translate that onto film. And I understand that it's been done very well and very sympathetically and very earnestly.
Good. Sounds very good. Gary says yes.
Thumbs up from me. Yes, definitely. And I think last time we spoke, you were getting towards the end of Mindhunter. How have you got on with that?
Finished it, done it. Really liked it. Really good.
In the bin.
I got really engrossed in it. It's an interesting series, because I think the phrase slow burner is definitely useful to describe it, because bangs and crashes going on, is there? There's not huge amounts of stuff happening, but it's really engrossing. So
Yeah, I mean, it's got the trappings of a police procedural drama with a bit of thriller attached. I think you can tell it's from the same guy that made Zodiac.
yeah,
It has echoes of that, but you're totally right in that it's not about the events than it is, say, the process and the tone.
it's definitely all about process and tone in a good way. It's like, and also it looks amazing. It's filmed really well and it's really well acted. I do sometimes
Yeah,
wish they would just turn on a bloody light switch when you're in this room. What? Aren't you just crashing into things all the time?
that is fairly true of Fincher's style overall, though he does favour a dark, muted palette, doesn't he?
Yeah, he would have loved this, like the UK in the 1970s when we had power cuts. That's, I think, would have been his best time to film. But I thought it was really good, and I do hope they make a new series. It feels like it needs a nice wrapping up. It's
Yeah, well, the whole thing has got an overarching story to it, isn't it? That it keeps dropping little scenes in from. That is a real case that you can go and read about. But clearly we haven't got there yet, and yet we're about to get there. So it's absolutely crying for it. If we can just make everyone's schedules align again.
Stop making films, David Fincher.
And yet don't as well. Is there something we could watch now?
Yeah, well, yet again, like we're talking about all these decent programs and decent filmmakers. It's definitely time to watch something by a terrible filmmaker. Now, I was just chatting to some of my friends, and I got a recommendation from my friend Kevin.
Okay.
And the recommendation is, I always get nervous at this point where I'm about to tell you, but the recommendation is the film Bullseye,
Now,
1990.
Hang on, Bullseye. Sunday evenings used to be Jim Bowen and his darts-based themed quiz. Is that what this is about?
Yeah. Super Smashing Crate.
Okay. Yep. This is going to mean lots to our American audience. Nothing for two in a bed, etc., and Bully's special prize.
Yeah, so what Gary and I are talking about is in the 1980s in the UK, there was a Sunday afternoon evening game show, which was basically darts, throwing darts. You play darts in America, don't you? Yes.
Ironically, I think.
Yeah, it was a dart game show. I mean, I really can't translate anymore.
And trust me, there's no production values to this. They just played darts with a few lights, and the prizes were famously ridiculed for being a bit good but a bit naff. A mobile touring caravan, or famously a speedboat, which no one in the UK is going to use a speedboat.
And they also did this awful thing. If you missed with the darts, they would show you. They showed you what you're about to win, but if you miss it, you don't get them. And they say to you, "Here's what you could have won," and they bring out all these prizes.
Have a look at what you could have won. Yes. And all looked over by a cartoon bull called Bully.
Bully the Bull. Yeah, I mean, it did happen, didn't it, Gary? We're not just making this up. We didn't just look like.
I don't know. I've definitely not rewatched some episodes on Challenge TV.
Yeah, it's on the internet, guys.
Somewhat mesmerising. The fashions of the day. A lot of tight perms.
A lot of really thick spectacles, massive spectacles.
Yes.
A lot of, let's say, slightly rotund gentlemen with huge forearms. A whiff of beer in the air, I imagine. And that's just the women.
And a packet of KP nuts.
Yeah. But this is not what we're talking about, Gary. This is Bullseye, 1990, starring Sir Michael Caine and Sir Roger Moore, absolute legends in international cinema, directed by that paragon of quality, Michael Winner.
Well, that's quite a sentence you put in there. Let's Michael Caine and Roger Moore in the same film. I don't think that it happened again, did it? And the fact that Michael Caine and Roger Moore, why have I never heard of this if it's Michael Caine and Roger Moore?
I know,
two of our most famous actors.
It's James Bond and Alfie. I mean, surely, what could go wrong? Michael Winner could go wrong.
You said Michael Winner. Now, for those that don't know Michael Winner, he's a rather blustering, bluffing, spectacle of a man. Died 2013. He's long passed away, but has a body of work of films that are generally, I would say, crime fetishistic in nature.
A bit sort of rubbish.
Well, let's see if that's true and see if they are rubbish.
I think in the 70s he had he had a few films which were hits, and I think he had a bit of a reputation, but I think his reputation rapidly plummeted into the toilet. And basically in the 90s and the most recent decades in the UK, he was a bit of a laughing stock. He just they'd wheel him out onto a chat show. He'd talk about working with all the greats in the 70s with a cigar in hand, drinking some sort of alcohol, and being a bit of a raconteur and not really being paid much attention. That was the vibe of him, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think in the 80s he was like, what is this? Yeah, well, I think he was also knowing because his Twitter bio at the time, before his death, obviously, you say something along the lines of, I am a totally insane film director, writer, bad-tempered, ridiculous example of humanity in shit, or something like that. It was quite a famous one. It was very him.
Yeah, from the horse's mouth itself. And actually, that was quite a good impression of him, Gary. Michael Winner. He kind of talked.
I was trying not to do too much of an impression, but it's really hard not to. It's one of those, like a Bruce Forsyth, like a Michael Caine, in fact, or Roger Moore. They're all instant, like, I really want to do the voice.
Roger Moore. I can't do Michael Caine.
Can you do Roger Moore?
Oh dear.
Right, let's get this over with. Let's go and watch this, whatever it is, this dart playing game. If I can find a trailer for it, I'll be amazed. But if I do, you'll be able to listen to a bit of it now, and we'll go and watch a film. See you on the other side.
Meet Dr. Hickler and Sir John Babistock, two corrupt scientists hiding a fortune in diamonds. Their only misfortune is that they share a striking resemblance to these two thieves.
This is absolutely unbelievable.
Now, with a little help,
plastic surgery,
these crooks will have the perfect faces to pull off the perfect heist.
My name is Hickler, Dr. Daniel Hickler.
Love the new nose, Sid. The accent stinks.
I'm dead.
But before these imposters can take off with the loot, they'll take on the real scientists.
You'll never guess who I've got tied up in my cabin.
Only you would think about sex at a time like this.
And with the way things are going, these thieves will need more than luck to stay alive.
Allow me, sir.
Even James Bond never had it this rough.
I've heard of losing your head over a woman. But this...
I don't know what I'm more worried about, being gunned down or updrafted.
The castle will hold up tonight. Don't worry, Sydney. Can't believe those two bums are still alive.
When Oscar winner Michael Caine, Roger Moore, and Sally Kirkland take aim to steal a fortune in diamonds,
everybody down!
You better take cover.
What's happened?
I think we should change caterers.
Bullseye, on target, and totally off the wall.
You don't look happy.
I come from a broken home.
Okay, so we just watched Bullseye from 1990. and that's time of my life I'm never getting back. I said before, Roger Moore and Michael Caine, why have I never heard of this film? It's because it's absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish.
Yeah, Bullseye bullshit.
Yeah. Go and apply to Sight and Sound, won't you? I often like to do a synopsis of a plot at this point, and I thought,
oh God,
it's really, I mean, and I sort of skimmed around and looked for other people's synopsis to get a synopsis of a synopsis. I found one that was 1,700 words on IMDb for this terrible, silly knockabout crime comedy. And it's more words than I used to do in my essays at school.
There's more words than the Old Testament, by the sounds of it. That's,
I think it is a chapter of the Old Testament.
Michael Winner's Old Testament, according to Winner.
Sounds like a euphemism. Essentially, Michael Caine and Roger Moore noticed that they look like two famous scientists, and therefore aim to concoct a plan so that they can replace them and steal some diamonds, I think. It then lasts about an hour and a half too long of its hour and a half running time.
Yeah, it's really, really confusing is what Gary's trying to tell you. Yeah, so it's Roger Moore and Michael Caine, and then they have twin doubles who are not related to them but look exactly the same as them. And sound exactly the same, apart from Michael Caine is doing what I imagine is meant to be an American accent.
It's the most generic American accent, you know. Pick a state, any state. It's one of those. Meanwhile, Roger Moore, famous for his cut glass accent, goes for Cockney.
Lunch with both of you? Oh, you're so kind.
Well, I don't know if Dr. Hickler can manage lunch.
I certainly can.
Yeah, I mean, Roger Moore basically just plays himself, but with a wig on most of the time.
Goodness me! I mean, is there any? Do you know what? I was amazed that it was made in 1990. If you'd have told me that was 1970 it was made, I'd get it, because it has a kind of carry-on film vibe and a kind of silly knockabout comedy that you used to get back then, made for 10 bob. For straight to TV type film, which would be fine, but for it to come out in 1990 flabbers my ghast.
It's a little bit too close to home, isn't it? It's a little bit too close to sort of modern day. Yeah, I just don't know how. I don't know how it happened. Apparently, it was co-written by Leslie Bricusse, which really surprised me because Leslie Bricusse. I don't know if you know who he is, Gary. Do you know who he is?
No.
He's a songwriter, and I know him from writing Bond themes, which is a weird coincidence. And he also wrote loads of famous music, particularly the music from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And he wrote it with Anthony Newley, who was in that other stupid film we watched,
Garbage Pail Kids. Yeah.
But Leslie Bricusse, a famous songwriter, is one of the script writers. I mean, already you started off on a bad footing. It's like, who should we get to write the script? I don't know, a plumber, a songwriter, whoever walks through the door next. Oh, it's Leslie Bricusse. Do you want to write a script? Yeah, go on then.
The whole thing has a feel of mates having a laugh, and not just the two actors, but like that they probably were good mates of Michael Winner as well.
Yes.
Roger Moore, Michael Caine, Michael Winner. You can see them all at a London club, puffing away on cigars, knocking back something, and just dropping a £1,000 tab or something, and coming up with this, and then just roping in all of their mates to play on this film.
Yeah, I mean, and they jet around. They go to Barbados in one scene, and one of their friends, including a blink and you'll miss it cameo from John Cleese, I believe.
That's bizarre. That's so bizarre.
Who literally is in it, and he is called Man Who Looks Like John Cleese, and they film it in the Bahamas. Yeah, it really is just an exercise in just hanging out, isn't it, this film? Roger Moore's doing his tip-top BDI acting. You know, when he does his like raised eyebrows and his double takes. You know, he does the I'm gonna look, then I'm gonna look again. That sort of acting. He's doing so much of it in this one. And Michael Caine is all over the place. He's doing obviously this strange American accent, but also he's doing a voiceover as one of the characters in one of the worst Cockney accents I've heard in a long time. And he's from London. He sounds like Del Boy from Only Fools and Horses. Yet again, if you're not British, look at it. I'm so sorry.
Really freezing out the audience today.
This is one of the most British-centric, but it's very famous. Only Fools and Horses. Look it up. It was a really famous British sitcom. Basically, he doesn't sound like the part of London where he's meant to be from. And I'm talking about Michael Caine himself is actually from. Yeah, Bullseye.
Well, you know, as he says, it features Britain's most famous castle, Whittingham Moat.
Oh yeah, that one.
Right.
Can you just confirm, Gary? Is one of the characters called Dr. Daniel Hitler?
You would be mistaken for thinking that, but it's not quite, because it's Hitler.
Wow. That was. I was wondering. Where they were going with that. They went nowhere with it because it didn't happen. But yet again, another thing which is so confusing about this film. I mean, the plot is just, so Michael Caine is just rattling off in his Cockney accent, and then me and blah 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 did this, and then would you believe it, so and so did this, and he does that all the way through the film. I imagine to help you understand,
help
the plot.
Glue the scenes together. Yeah,
it does not help the plot at all. I did not understand what was going on. I mean, is it entertaining?
Not really. If you could watch, there probably is one. I'll go look for it. If there was a 3-minute version, it might be worth watching. And I mean that, you know, because there's sort of like some knockabout, as you say, a bit of Roger Moore eyebrow raising and Michael Caine just being cheeky and charming. There's probably enough of that to sustain a 3-minute version.
Yes.
But an hour and a half, no thanks. It also feels like the entire thing has been overdubbed in post. It's been looped. So none of the lines feel like they're coming out of the real people's mouths.
Yeah.
I wonder if the sound guys just didn't exist.
Did I see 2 dogs humping on the back of a truck?
You did, as a distraction, wasn't it?
I mean, if you actually write down all the things that this film has, it looks like an absolute classic, but it really isn't. I mean, I can see why some people might find it amusing. There are some funny things in it, but only they're not things that are meant to be funny. It is actually a comedy, and none of the comedy is funny.
I think if you found it when you were age 10, it could be a childhood favourite. You go, oh, yeah. I loved that when I was a kid. I watched it like 5 times on VHS back to back. And I could kind of get it because it's so knockabout wacky. And it feels like it should be funny, you know, but you're not old enough to get the jokes, so you don't realise how bad the jokes are. I tell you what, there was one line I actually quite liked, and I've written down, which is, the closest you'll get to a brainstorm is a drizzle.
Which character says that? Which actor says it?
I think it's old Caney boy, isn't it?
Well, mate, try and do it in your best Caine. I mean, the listeners really want to hear you do your best Michael Caine impression. Come on, they've tuned in, so let's set the scene.
Is it Cockney Caine or American Caine?
Whichever one you feel most comfortable with. So I'm Michael Winner. Okay, Michael, let's do it. One more go and action.
The closest you'll get to a brainstorm is a drizzle.
Well, that was excellent, Michael. Yes. Very well done, Gary. I'm sure the listeners will agree that was a very good impromptu Michael Caine impression. You're getting everything in this episode.
Yeah. Well, in fact, just to complete the picture, why don't I deliver it again as Roger Moore? The closest you'll get to a brainstorm is a drizzle.
Great. That was Roger Moore doing an impression of Christopher Lee, which was great.
There is something of a similarity.
I've got another quote written down. I can't remember who's saying it, so maybe I'll just sort of make up who's saying it. Okay, yeah. So Michael Caine's character has, at the beginning of the film, which really confused me, has a massive plastic nose. Did you notice that?
Yes.
And I thought they were meant to be twin. Oh god, it's so confusing. Anyway, Michael Caine has a huge rubber nose. It took me about 5 minutes to work out. Oh, that is actually Michael Caine. Then he goes to the hospital and he has plastic surgery. They take off the rubber nose, and then he looks like Michael Caine. Oh, how amazing!
Here, my one's got a funny nose. You're the one with a funny nose.
Plastic surgery.
But when he's in the bed with his nose bandaged up, he says to Roger Moore, "What do you think they do with all the bits they chop off?" Referring to his nose. And Roger Moore says, "Well, they glue them all back together and make Michael Jackson." And then Michael Caine says, "Who's Michael Jackson?" And then the scene ends.
I mean, it's not a good joke, but they had a joke, and then they end it with that line. I mean, what does that mean? How does someone in 1990 not know who Michael Jackson is, who was like the biggest pop star on the planet at the time?
Well, they glue them all back. Yeah, I can't do it. So I can only do Roger Moore if I'm saying the name Roger Moore. Roger Moore. Roger Moore. I can't do a sentence. This was.
It's not good, is it? It's not good.
It was quite a trial. This one.
To be honest, there's so little entertainment value in that, Jay. Yeah. I kind of fancy watching something else.
Yeah, I think you're right, Gary. I think we need to actually do a legendary Michael Winner film.
Whoa! I didn't say do more Michael Winner. Come on.
Yeah, well, I'm saying it. So,
God's sake.
You know what we've been trying to watch for ages, and actually we've discussed.
Oh no! I've just worked out where you're going with this.
Yeah. I think what we should do is we should break the format of the show, Gary, and do a double barrel Michael Winner special, Bullseye, and then followed up with Death Wish 3, starring Bronson.
Yes, Bronson from Grange Hill. There's another reference for everyone else. It's all your 80s favourites.
If he should put in an appearance, kindly have him escorted to my office. It is time that young man was brought into line.
I'm so sorry if you're not British, but you know.
Mr Bronson, of course, Michael Sheard, famously Admiral Ozzel in Empire Strikes Back, and Hitler in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yes. He felt surprised. Was wise. He is as clumsy as he is stupid. That's
indeed. Yeah. Okay. Death Wish 3 then.
Let's do it.
I confess I haven't watched Death Wish 1 or 2. I've got the feeling it's not going to matter.
It's Michael Winner. Who cares? Yes. We need to erase Bullseye. We need to blow it out of the sky with Death Wish 3. Come on, let's do it.
Okay, here we go then.
New York, a city pushed to the edge. People pushed to the limit, and no one's got the guts to stop them.
It's collection time, Charlie.
3 murders, 4 rapes, 9 acts of random violence. This isn't a neighborhood, it's a war.
But there is one way. One man who won't be pushed. Charles Bronson.
What's the problem? Now you're gonna die.
It'll be just like before, Mr. Vigilante, with one important difference. You're gonna work for me.
People have got to start to fight back and hard.
I sent them a message.
That's him.
I'll take care of him.
And now, he's in the middle of a war.
See what you done? You got me mad.
In a world gone mad, there is only one law. His. Charles Bronson, Death Wish 3. Bronsons back in New York, bringing justice to the streets. Charles Bronson, Death Wish 3.
So that was Death Wish 3 from 1985, another film de Michael winner. Tantalizingly, also 1 hour 30 minutes, same as Bullseye. The rough plot of that is Paul Kersey, Bronson, Charles Bronson, arrives back in New York City and goes to meet his old mate who gets killed. And the police try and arrest him for that murder. I don't quite know how that works. But then the police start beating him up a bit. He fights back and he agrees to help the police chief clean up the town. I think that's roughly what happens. And he sort of... and that's what he does. Yeah.
They sort of employ him as a vigilante, don't they? I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. They literally, I did write a few things down. He arrives at the apartment of his friend, and his friend has just been killed or something by a gang member, and he's looking over his body as he's just dying, and then the police arrive. And they see Charles Bronson there, and they go, "You killed him!" And then they arrest him. Then they take him to the police station and beat him up and say, "You killed him! You killed him!" They just walk out of the apartment and leave a dead body in there. By the way, did you notice that? They just drive off with a dead body.
Well, it's not the police job, is it?
And I don't know if that's how police sort of work happens, but you don't sort of arrive at a scene, arrest the first person you see, and just go, "You are there. You must have done it," and then take him. I don't really think that that's what happens, right?
I've never taken the police exam, so I don't know.
Yeah, there is no plot to this. Basically, it's a Michael Winner film. What are you looking for?
So this is much more peak Michael Winner, what he's known for. This sort of exploitative, trashy crime vigilante film. Death Wish 1 took a shed load of money, hence there were 2 sequels. But you know, there's it's a nasty, lingering feeling over all of these, and I've got a sort of leering, fetishistic vibe, a nasty. I really quite like violence bit, and I really quite like objectifying women. That's just really sickening.
You're not what? You're not saying that Michael Winner was a bit pervy? Surely not.
I did not say that. But I think his films feel like it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. This is there's a few scenes in this film where let me just put it this way. I questioned the decision making of the director. That's all I'll say. Can I just mention that it's got one of the most shoddy opening shots of all time. I don't know if you remember this, Gary, but it literally opens on a shaky cam of a bus. The camera is all over the place. It's just a bus going down the street, and the camera is like wobbling all over the place, set to some of the worst music I've ever heard in a film. And it's kind of like 80s synthy, funky, a bit saxophony. It's to me it sounded a bit like one of those American soap operas, like from the 80s, like Dynasty or Dallas or something. And then the credit comes up, composer Jimmy Page.
Yeah, I sort of had to pick my jaw up off the floor on the very unlikely thought that someone doesn't know Jimmy Page is going to fill them in.
Yesterday I spent the whole day listening to about 4 or 5 albums back to back of Led Zeppelin, who are, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best bands ever. The guitarist of Led Zeppelin is Jimmy Page. Some of the best music from the 1970s or ever. And the soundtrack to Death Wish 3 is, I don't know, there are no words to describe how bad, how much of a travesty the music to Death Wish 3 is.
So speaking of the music of Death Wish 3, weirdly, the only reference point I had for Death Wish 3 before we watched it is in about 1988, I got a compilation tape from my Commodore 64, and one of the games on there was Death Wish 3. And I can still remember the game now, but more importantly, I can remember the music. And I kid you not, the theme from that song runs through my head so often, at least once a week, particularly if I'm in a hurry somewhere. I don't know if it's to do with the pace of it, but I'll try and link to the soundtrack below because it's quite a good little tune. If you're into the 64 Sid tune stuff, it's a bit niche. Talking about multi-dimensional horror, one of the women in it is Marina Sirtis, more famous for her role as Troy in Star Trek: The Next Generation, who gets really, I can't believe I'm saying this, really uncomfortably raped in one scene.
Oh,
I can't believe I'm adding uncomfortably, like there's another way to do it, but it doesn't feel right either. And I actually dredged up a quote from her from 2019 where she said, "I know you're not supposed to speak ill of the dead, but I hope director Michael Winner will rot in hell for all eternity. I was pressured into doing a graphic rape scene with nudity I did not feel comfortable with."
Oh dear. I think he's quite literally been cancelled. Never mind. He's dead. So yeah, it goes on forever, that scene. It happens halfway through. And it sort of comes out of nowhere, really, and it just never ends. And you just think, oh, really? You could cut here? No, you're going to continue. Oh, cut here. So there is a scene earlier on where the same character played by Deanna Troi, whatever her name is, Marina Sirtis, she's being chased by, is it Bill from Bill and Ted?
It is, Alex Winter.
Yeah, so she's being chased by... Deanna Troi from Star Trek: The Next Generation is being chased by Bill from Bill and Ted, and then Bill from Bill and Ted says one of these amazing lines. He says,
"Yo, bitch, come here! I want to eat you."
"Yo, bitch, come here! I want to eat you." And then,
it's nice, isn't it?
So Bill from Bill and Ted and Troy from Star Trek: Next Generation are having this lovely conversation, and then Charles Bronson hits Bill over the head with a crowbar. And I was just looking at that scene thinking, wow, there's a lot of elements there going on. It's quite dense. It's quite... I bet none of the actors thought that this was how their career was going to start. This is not... Bronson is just half asleep through the whole film. I must say, he's really awfully bad in this film.
Yeah, he is. He's a strange... do you remember you said about Bullseye? What do they do with all the pieces from the plastic surgery when they're left over? I think they make Charles Bronson.
Wow, yeah, he just wanders around like he's some sort of mannequin. He just has dead eyes. He says almost nothing. And when he does, it's so uncomfortable. He's awful. He's a legend, right? But I don't know why.
I don't know why either.
I've written down Bronson monosyllabic on my notes, and that's certainly...
But he's not a good actor either.
He's
not wrong in that, am I? He's very wooden. He says things oddly.
The first bit of bad acting, he's in the back of a taxi, and there's a roadblock in front of him, and he says to the cabbie, "Hey, cabbie, there's $20 if you can get round." And it's just so bad, and that's only 5 minutes in. 5 minutes in, and you're already starting with an awful acting. It just gets worse.
You also get fantastic delivery of lines like,
Mrs. Rodriguez has expired.
I wrote that down. That's a good one.
yeah. And what does he reply? Did you write that bit down?
No, I didn't write that down.
You told me over the phone she only had a broken arm.
Oh yeah, yes, right. Death by broken arm, guys. It happens, yeah. I mean, there must be some statistics. 3 people a century die of a broken arm, so it's not no laughing matter. And
when your arm breaks off and takes half the body with it, yeah.
What you just think? Why would you write that into your script? Character dies of broken arm. Yeah, write that down. Great, that is great. Get that down. Real life there. I mean, talking of the script, it is all over the place. It is so bad, right? I mean, I'm not making it up. It was terrible. I mean, what about that scene between him, Bronson, and the I think she's a librarian or something. I don't know what she is, but she starts off.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well,
As soon as you see her, you know they're going to do the cliche thing because she's got her hair tied up. She's got glasses on. At some point, she's going to do the thing where she takes the glasses off and shakes her hair out, and she looks attractive.
Oh, and she gets all the screen gets a bit Vaseline and soft focus as well.
Yeah.
There's a scene where they're sort of like. I was going to say getting it on, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like a wake. But she basically drives. She gets a cab to a random part of the city, and she gets out. And she says, "Hey," she's already met him by this point, but she says, "Hey, do you want to go out?" So she drives to him to ask him out. Anyway, they meet up, and there's this weird scene just goes on, and the dialogue is awful.
I made chicken. I hope you like it. It's the only thing I know how to make.
Chicken's good. I like chicken.
Cut to a carcass of dead chicken. Another.
Lovely.
The scene goes on, Gary. I have one sister, and I hate her. She laughs. But I love sports. What do you like? I like opera.
He so doesn't like opera.
What on earth is? I mean, I literally could write a better script, blindfolded, upside down, underwater, whilst dead. That is. I can't really. I mean, we've watched so many bad films. There's so much bad dialogue, but that scene is like psychedelically bad. I've got another quote here. There's a Jewish couple. I only say they're Jewish because the guy is wearing a Jewish cap. I don't know why it's important, but Charles Bronson is talking to them, and one of them says to his wife, "He was admiring your dinner," and she says, and I think you're going to have to find it. She says, "Stuffed cabbage."
She said what?
Stuffed cabbage.
Stuffed cabbage. I must have nodded off or something. I don't recall that delicacy.
Oh God, stuffed cabbage. Yeah.
And he was admiring your dinner.
Stuffed cabbage.
Smells wonderful.
Would you like to join us?
Sure.
Well, you're talking about things people said. He also he's very happy to talk about his gun called Wildy, which is really odd because that's my grandmother's maiden name. So that's all I could think of when he said that.
Oh my God. Is that during the old age pensioners weapons meeting?
Yes, that's the one.
What about
Let's also talk about go on.
No, what were you going to say, Gary? I want to know what you're about to say.
I was going to say it's probably the least convincing New York I've ever seen.
Oh God, I'm so glad you've mentioned this. I've got copious notes written down. I thought they were going to, when they do title cards at the beginning to set the scene of where they are, like New York or New Orleans, like the words come up on the screen. I thought it was going to come up as not London or not a Setville. It looks so fake. And not only does it look so fake, by the end of the film, you can see over the sets, which are so obviously sets, you can just see the London skyline. It's like, why have you even bothered to set it in New York? Just set it in London, because London is literally on the screen. It's it's such shoddy.
Particularly when you and I sort of know that bit of London reasonably well, and you think, yeah, I recognise those sort of streets and I recognise those type of houses. It's very strange.
Apparently, Michael Winner was impressed by the Victorian houses that New York and London shares. I literally, is he blind? It looks nothing like New York. He might as well have just kept in the black cabs and the red telephone boxes. Yeah, we have loads of those in Brooklyn. Yeah, get in the black cab. Yeah.
Why do you think they did that and didn't just say, we're going to, Death Wish London? Do you think it was not cool at the time?
Probably not cool. And I think Michael Winner has pretensions of being a real filmmaker rather than just shoddy, lazy, film it in your backyard type filmmaker, which certainly on this expedition seems to be what he was going for.
It's a baffling film. What about all the Home Alone stuff? He sees black footprints in his house, right? Who's walking around in tar with black footprints
with a jaunty comedy sort of saxophone brass soundtrack tune?
Yeah, so he lays down an entire board packed with nails to catch bad guys as they come in. Madness. And yet there's no Kevin McAllister anywhere. I think Christopher Columbus was watching this thinking, this could work if we make the protagonist 60 years younger.
I wrote down Tom and Jerry traps. It was just
same thing.
Charles Bronson does Tom and Jerry. What about the machine gun in the cupboard, Gary? Do you remember that scene?
Oh, well, it was very reminiscent of my own machine gun I've got in a cupboard.
Yeah, he's who's the old man exposition?
Oh, Ernest Borgnine, who isn't Ernest Borgnine?
Yeah,
Ernest Borgnate.
Very good, Gary. Very good. He kind of looks like a cross between a potato and a walnut. He just turns up and he just says to Charles Bronson, "Hey, let me explain the plot to you." And he just does that all the way through.
Spoilers: he doesn't have many lines.
But then he shows him to his cupboard right at the end. He says, "Hey, did you know I've got a machine gun in the cupboard?"
What do you know?
And also a bazooka.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Well, you know what London's like.
Yeah, so there's that obviously leads to one amazing scene. I mean, I will say that this film is darn sight more entertaining than Bullseye, particularly because of scenes
High
like
praise.
when I've written down 1 hour 25 minutes bazooka time, because Charles Bronson is just about to get shot by the main antagonist. I've forgotten his name. He's got a gun to him, and Charles Bronson just happens to have concealed in his trousers or something, I don't know where he concealed it, a bazooka. Yes, that's right, a bazooka. And he just turns around and he fires this bazooka, and the whole side of the building explodes. So he doesn't just blow up the guy, he blows up the whole side of the house that he's in.
Yeah, of course he does.
Which really is what Michael Winner's approach to this whole film was, really. Sort of bazooka style filmmaking.
Not understated.
No. Did you notice all of the terrible dummies that were thrown off of things? There's loads of people being thrown off, but it's actually just dummies. And Michael Winner just chooses to film really close up this dummy falling all the way to the bottom, and as it bounces on the ground or whatever.
That's the thing, is to catch that final moment where it bounces. If you just cut it a little earlier, you can probably get away with it, but
I mean, some scenes were so shoddy, like you can just see that the man running down the street is not Charles Bronson. He's a man half his age with a big fat wig on.
Who can run.
Yeah, there's so many of those stunt performers who are like right in the camera's face, and they don't look anything like the character they're meant to be. It's almost like a scene from one of those Naked Gun films. Do you know what? Basically, if I didn't know any better, Death Wish 3 was a Zucker and Zucker Abrahams.
Yes. The Death Wish number 3.
I mean, looked on it with that sort of frame. I mean, it makes more sense, really. Maybe that's what Michael Winner was trying to go for. You know,
Jay, it's rubbish. I mean, can you recommend it?
I would not recommend Bullseye.
No.
Although there are, like we discussed, there are some scenes which are vaguely amusing, but I think I would recommend Death Wish 3. It is astonishingly stupid, and it's quite iconic. There's some iconic scenes. There's quite iconic lines. It's just batshit stupid. I mean, it does drag every now and again, but there's some lovely scenes where Bronson is kissing ladies really close up. Really close up, and you can hear like the smoochy bits. You get Deanna Troy, you get Bill from Bill and Ted. I would recommend it, as long as you realise it's completely and utterly stupid.
That's not my opinion. Yes. Okay. Well, that's enough blarney about Michael Winner. I'm sure you've been convinced to go and watch both of those. Maybe we've missed Michael Winner's magnum opus amongst all that. If we have, please get in touch and let us know. Find us on Twitter or Instagram. That's all for today now. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you very much.
And that's all from me. Goodbye.
Bye.